So here's my honest thoughts on whether you need to be good at math to learn programming. Yes, you do need to be good at math, but probably not for the reasons that you might imagine. Hey, my name is Khan. I'm currently a software engineer at a startup, and I've worked for companies like Sony and Google. And over the course of programming for about 8 years now, I've formed an opinion on this question of whether you need to be good at math to be a programmer. The short answer is a yes, but there's definitely nuance that requires a longer answer. That's what this video is about. The points that I want to cover are that 1, the answer really depends on what you mean by good at math. 2, being better at math makes us better programmers up until a certain point. And 3, go over examples of where you actually need math in programming. Okay, let's dive in. Point number 1, what is the definition of good at math? If it means that you got good grades in your math classes, that's only a partial indicator of whether you're actually good at math. Because grades are a window into testing ability and preparation skills, not necessarily a mastery of the conceptual mental models or underlying fundamentals of math like problem solving. That said, chances are, if you got decent grades in math, you're probably a decent problem solver, but it's not necessarily guaranteed, and that's my point. So if you think about what it means to actually be good at math, you're probably looking at key characteristics like interested in solving problems, can adhere to a logical thinking process, can decompose a complex problem into smaller ones, and have the tenacity to find solutions. So if you embody these characteristics, whether you got good grades in math classes or not, you'll probably be pretty good at programming. A counterexample would be someone that's really good at problem solving, but absolutely hates their math teacher, which makes it highly unlikely that you'll actually enjoy the class enough to get a decent grade. This is why using a grade as a measurement of competence is flawed. You don't have to get good grades in math necessarily to be good at programming, but you do have to embody the underlying key characteristics. Point number 2 is that being better at math makes you a better programmer up until a certain point. If you focus on the underlying fundamentals of math, like logical thinking and problem solving, they very much apply to programming. But as you get into the specifics and more advanced topics like trigonometry, calculus, discrete math, linear algebra, and more, it starts to get less relevant for the average programmer. Most of our jobs as programmers uses basic math skills like arithmetic and algebra, not advanced math. There are a few subtopics within programming that heavily rely on mathematical foundations though, like data science and machine learning. I'll cover this in more detail in just a minute. But for the average programmer outside of these specific subtopics, you use basic arithmetic and algebra for the most part. So having a super strong mathematical foundation in advanced math topics is unnecessary to be a good programmer. But you do want to know the basics well. And if you really don't enjoy math, but find yourself interested in programming, it might be good to be aware of how different areas of expertise in programming use or don't use math, which leads me to my next point. Point number 3 is about where you actually need math in programming. The foundations of computers and our digital world are number systems. We convert between many different number systems in computer science: decimal, base 10, binary, base 2, hexadecimal, base 16, base 58, and base 64, which don't have cool names like the other ones, and so on. Having an understanding of what all this means is rooted in number systems, which is inherently math heavy, but it doesn't require advanced math skills. Probably basic algebra, like high school math level, is sufficient for getting a good grasp on it. You also use many concepts from algebra in programming: numbers, math operations and arithmetic, expressions, equations, and functions. The bread and butter of algebra are also the bread and butter of programming. Even if you don't consider yourself good at math, take the time to get a firm grip on algebra if you don't already. I think it's safe to say that algebra is a prerequisite to programming. Although people might debate this one way or another, I don't think there's any denying that the more comfortable you are with these concepts from algebra, the more comfortable you'll be programming. If you also work on client-side code, whether that's mobile apps or front-end development, you'll come across the use of geometry. We have to calculate things like relative dimensions, aspect ratios, positioning something relative to another, and more. Now, if you're looking to get into data science or machine learning, math does get pretty critical. Stats, linear algebra, and calculus are heavily used in this context. Computer graphics and game development often work with geometry, 3D modeling, and physical simulations, which are all heavily rooted in math. Cryptography and blockchain development is also rooted in math too because of their heavy use of hashing functions. Now, that doesn't mean you can't work for a data science company, a game studio, or a Web3 company, just because you aren't all that keen on advanced math topics. These companies need plain old regular productive software developers to work on more general software development too. So don't let your lack of interest in math stop you from pursuing programming. And I say all this because I'm an example of someone that really didn't like advanced math. I got to calculus in high school and I quit after one semester of it because I found out that I enjoyed more creative pursuits like music and art, and I've never taken another math class since. But I still ended up being a professional software engineer. Okay, so that's the nuanced, longer answer to the question of whether you need to be good at math to be a programmer. I hope this has been insightful and you found it to be valuable. If you want more content about coding and being a software engineer, be sure to subscribe to my newsletter, thecommit.dev. I share weekly insights about how to be an effective programmer and a high-performing individual. I'll leave a link to it in the video description. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye-bye.